Pilots were buzzed by a red UFO. In 2017, the skies over Oregon turned chaotic. Somewhere above the cold, open airspace west of Eugene, Oregon, just past twilight, a medevac pilot saw something he couldn't explain. It wasn't turbulence, it wasn't a drone, and it wasn't alone. Out of the darkness came a red, circular object, hovering silently, then zipping toward his aircraft with impossible speed. Within seconds, it reversed course and vanished back over the Pacific, leaving nothing but confusion and rising adrenaline in the cockpit.
Red in color, moving at extreme speeds. I don't even know how to describe how fast it's moving.
The strange object wasn't showing up on radar, but it was on TCAS. By the end of the night, multiple aircraft, commercial and medical, would report similar sightings. Objects flying in corkscrew patterns, appearing and disappearing, some as high as 55,000 feet. Pilots scrambled to record what they could. Aircraft control patched in the Coast Guard, and across the radio, seasoned professionals asked the same question: what is out here with us? To understand what happened in the skies over Oregon that night, and why it still puzzles both aviation experts and skeptics, we need to trace every transmission, every voice, and every red light that blinked where no aircraft should have been. Autumn along the Pacific Northwest can bring along stretches of gray skies, but above the clouds, the air lanes over Oregon are some of the busiest and most precisely managed on the West Coast. Beneath those high-altitude corridors lie quiet rural communities, thick forests, and a coastline that stretches into nothing but open ocean. For air traffic controllers and pilots alike, this region is routine, mapped, measured, and predictable. The medical transport aircraft involved that evening was a pilotless PC-12 operated by an experienced medevac crew flying a well-known route along the coast. For them, it was just another mission. No weather complications, no air traffic conflicts, and no known military operations scheduled in their corridor. The skies were clear, the radar was calm. In the tower at Seattle Center, known as ZSE, controllers were handling a typical load of traffic, passenger jets, cargo runs, and a handful of smaller private planes. Among them was a Horizon Air Flight 2207, a commercial passenger aircraft whose crew would become the first to ask a strange question over the radio: "Do you have anything on radar out at our 10 o'clock?" The response was calm and standard, but then more reports came in. Pilots aboard multiple aircraft, including Medevac 661, Lima Foxtrot, and Alaska 1596, described something out of place: red lights hovering, moving in circles, then suddenly accelerating at speeds no commercial aircraft could match. Some of the objects appeared on TCAS, the onboard collision avoidance systems, but none were visible on ATC radar. One pilot reported the object coming within 20 miles of his wingtip before shooting back toward the ocean. Controllers grew uneasy. More than one aircraft now confirmed sightings at different altitudes, some as low as 14,000 feet, others shooting up into the 50s. One pilot described a corkscrew motion. Another called it hypersonic. These weren't the words of excitable civilians. They came from trained professionals with thousands of hours in the air. Whatever was out there didn't match any known aircraft. It wasn't squawking a transponder code, and it wasn't behaving like a drone or balloon. In fact, it wasn't behaving like anything they'd ever seen. And as the reports kept coming in, Seattle Center began contacting the Coast Guard. Something, possibly multiple objects, was in Oregon airspace, and no one knew where it had come from or where it would go next. The transmission started off routine, calm, composed, clipped, just another night guiding aircraft over the Pacific Northwest. But then came the break in protocol. A Horizon Air pilot called in, asking if there were any aircraft in his 10 o'clock. What he described wasn't a plane, it was a cluster of lights, moving strangely, not in formation, but independently, changing direction in a way that no satellite or commercial aircraft ever could. They weren't just drifting, they were maneuvering. Aircraft control scanned their systems. Nothing showed, not even a primary radar hit. But more pilots chimed in. each describing similar lights: red, circular, fast. One aircraft reported as many as 4, darting around each other in the open sky. The clearest sighting came from the medevac aircraft, call sign 661 Lima Foxtrot. Flying along the coast at cruising altitude, the pilot spotted something at his 2 o'clock, visually and on TCAS. It was hovering. Then, without warning, it zipped toward him. It zipped in about 20 miles, he said, then shot back out toward the ocean. Soon, he spotted another, this time higher, possibly in the 50,000-foot range, and moving in what he could only describe as a corkscrew motion. It was red, he radioed, red in color, moving at extreme speeds. I don't even know how to describe how fast. What unsettled the crew wasn't just the velocity, it was the precision. The object would shoot toward them, then veer away without a trace, only to reappear minutes later in a different position, always circling, always just far enough to avoid direct confrontation. Despite multiple visual confirmations, the object remained invisible to radar. The Coast Guard was contacted and briefed. A helicopter operating at low altitude was nearby, but too low to see what the pilots were witnessing above. No aircraft in the area were squawking in emergency. No one had flight clearance to be there. And yet, something was clearly there. The medevac pilot's voice stayed professional, but you could hear it, a tension just beneath the surface. His medical crew in the back tried to film it. He even gave the controller his personal phone number, offering to share any footage. This wasn't someone imagining things. This was someone documenting the unknown in real time, trying to make sense of something no textbook or training had prepared him for. One pilot summarized it best. "It's weird. It keeps zipping out over the ocean and coming back, like it's watching us." By the time the final aircraft checked in, the object had disappeared again, silent, traceless, undetected. But the voices over the radio lingered. Experienced aviators all reporting the same thing, a red circular object maneuvering like nothing known to man. And what came next, on the ground and in official transcripts, would only deepen the mystery. Despite multiple flight crews reporting direct visual contact with red, circular craft moving at extraordinary speeds, what followed was an unsettling silence, both on radar and from official channels. No official statement was issued, no military exercise was acknowledged, and no clear explanation was ever offered for why unidentified objects were seen by professionals maneuvering in busy airspace while leaving no radar signature. Seattle Center confirmed they had nothing on screen, not even a primary radar target. Yet Aircraft Traffic Collision Avoidance Systems, TCAS, had detected objects. That alone raises questions. How could an object trigger a TCAS proximity alert while remaining invisible to FAA radar? For skeptics, this was a likely glitch, a known blind spot in radar coverage over the Pacific, particularly in low altitudes. Others, including retired aviation technician Mark Jernigan, disagree. The TCAS aviation confirms something was physically present. The radar silence doesn't disprove it. It points to something we don't understand. Media attention at the time was minimal. Only a few niche aviation and UFO platforms covered the event in detail. One of the most circulated sources came not from headlines, but from the FAA's own audio recordings, meticulously archived and shared by civilian researchers. Those audio logs remain some of the most compelling evidence, calm, professional pilots describing unknown aerial phenomena in real time. Contradictions, however, persist. No photos or video from the medevac crew ever surfaced publicly. The pilot mentioned his crew attempted to film the object, but to this day, no verified footage has emerged. That silence has fueled speculation. Were the recordings lost, censored, or simply inconclusive? Witness testimony remains consistent on one thing. Whatever was in the sky that night was fast, agile, and behaved unlike any conventional aircraft. But not everyone agrees on what it was. Some suggest advanced military testing, experimental hypersonic drones, or high-altitude surveillance platforms. The U.S. has tested such technology before, and the Pacific Northwest has historically hosted military flight corridors. Yet, no tests were scheduled, and no agency claimed responsibility. Others believe it was a natural phenomenon, electromagnetic mirages, ball lightning, or temperature inversions causing illusions. Atmospheric physicist Dr. Elena Chavez offered a grounded take. Pilots sometimes encounter rare optical effects at night, especially over the ocean, but the maneuvering patterns described here are unusual. And then there's a third possibility, one the pilots themselves never stated outright, but one listeners have drawn from their tone.
Just had another one show up about my 1 o'clock, about 1,000 feet high, zipping towards us and then back out towards the ocean.
Their confusion and their caution that these craft were not from any known military, weather, or natural source. To this day, no one has definitively proven what was or wasn't flying over Oregon's airspace at night. The TCAS detections remain unexplained, the Coast Guard saw nothing, and pilots' voices, captured in radio chatter, are left as the clearest trace of something extraordinary. What began as a calm night flight became one of the most compelling modern cases of unidentified aerial activity in controlled airspace. And it's in that unresolved space between radar silence and eyewitness certainty that the real mystery lives on. The sky remains silent. No official report ever surfaced, no footage was released, and no radar data has explained what those pilots saw moving above the Pacific, faster than anything that ever tracked. Yet the voices remain, calm, trained professionals describing lights that danced across the sky, machines that outpaced their instruments, and something that moved with a kind of intelligence they couldn't define. Was it a classified aircraft, a rare atmospheric phenomenon, or something far less familiar? Even now, those who heard the transmission recall the tension in the air, the quiet disbelief laced beneath clipped radio exchanges. These weren't people seeking attention, they were simply doing their jobs, until something broke the routine and left them questioning everything. And that's what stays with you, the lack of closure. Because when radar fails, but eyes do not, who do we believe? When multiple flight crews describe the same impossible thing, how much longer can we write it off as coincidence? Some say the sky holds secrets we're not meant to uncover. Others say the truth is already here. We're just not looking in the right direction. So the question remains, what flew over Oregon that night? And more importantly, has it returned? Let me know what you think. Was this something man-made or a message from somewhere else? Keep exploring. Stay curious. Was the red object over Oregon a breakthrough in human technology or something not of this world at all? Share your thoughts in the comments below.